Good, good. How many of you guys are going to the game on Saturday? Game's on Saturday, right? Yeah. What are the rest of you doing? Are you going home?
Me?
Yeah.
No,
Oh, you're going to the
I
game.
don't get to go home. I go everywhere. The football team together. Like,
Oh, wow. Are you in the band?
yeah,
Which instrument do you play?
piccolo.
Oh, awesome. Do you guys remember this was Villanova when they lost the basketball championship in 2013 and there was Piccolo Grove?
Yes. I remember
Yeah.
that. That's our group meme.
That's awesome. See, that's so awesome. But what was fascinating about it was I think a year or 2 years later, Villanova actually won, and Piccolo Girl was in the audience playing too. So people tried to throw shade on Piccolo Girl, but Piccolo Girl had the last laugh. So we are entering a very exciting part of the course where we get to engage with a lot of research papers. And what I tried to do is to start us off with, so we did the Dartmouth study of roommates. And how many of you guys read that? Yeah, okay. And the whole idea was really to get you into this gently by starting off with something that would be familiar, but a topic that's very interesting. And as we go through this, I'm trying to be very judicious in terms of picking articles that are going to expand your understanding of the economics of education, and also our articles that are accessible. So today, we had 4 articles, and each of them were like small articles, like 5 to 8 pages. How many of you guys were able to read the articles that we have for today? All right, definitely do try to read them. Like I'm being very thoughtful in terms of picking up these articles, making sure that they're accessible, etc. Okay, so we have a lot to talk about today. So let's see where we're going to start. Okay. So let's start with the Langford and the Wyckoff article. And what I want you to get from this is, so there are a couple of really surprising facts about the U.S. Teaching market. And let's start with that. All right, so we're going to pop this here. Very striking facts here. So who can tell me what's the total number of elementary school and also secondary school teachers in the U.S. according to the Langford article? Say it again? 3.6. Right. So we have 3.6 million elementary secondary school teachers. And what percentage of the college-educated labor force in the United States do these teachers represent?
9.6 or something?
Yeah, 9.2. Okay. So they represent 9.2% of the college educated labor force. And we should put this caveat that we're really looking for people between 25. And so we have a lot of people in terms of the quantity. They represent a large fraction of the labor force that is college educated. And so like 1 in 10 folks that go to college are going to be teaching, right? And so far in this course, we've looked at what's the returns to education. Why do we care particularly about teachers? So like, what must be true about teachers in terms of like production of education for us to care about teachers?
quality teachers produce better results than students.
Yeah, so we have to believe that there's some, that teachers and teachers in terms of the total number of teachers and also the quality of teachers is an input into the educational production function of students. Right, and we talked about earlier in the course that we care about student productivity because we care about student inputs because it leads to student outputs, for example, like test scores, et cetera, college attendance. And then we care about these things because they matter for labor market outcomes. They also matter for certain social outcomes, like say responsible citizenship with respect to voting, obeying the laws, et cetera, right? And so these teachers are a huge input into the production function, into our educational production function. And so there are a lot of studies that show that teachers have an impact on student outcomes. There we go. Right. So there's research. Shows that teachers positively impact student outcomes. But what's an example of one of these articles that the paper cites to back up this claim? It's not a true question. So the Langford paper cites a number of papers that back up this claim. Just give me one.
It's like the aptitude level of teachers.
Like a specific paper, like who's that written by?
I don't remember all the time.
Paper in front of you. Make sure to bring the papers when you come to class. It's gonna
Yeah.
help me a little bit.
Department of Education.
So if you look just in the first line, you'll see like the science rock off 2004, and then you can always like go to the back and say, okay, well, what does that article say? So let's go. Let's look at rock off 2004. The impact of individual teachers on student achievement evidence from that data. Right. And so again, this is another note about writing papers. Is that you want to start with this big idea. Like, what's the big idea? Education is a really big deal because a lot of people are employed in education. The people that are employed here represent a significant fraction of the labor force, and they can have a potentially big impact on student outcomes. Here's the example of a study that says this. Right? So this is really teeing up why is it important for us to study this. Now, can those of you in the back see here, this line here? Now, there's a particularly big educational crisis in the United States. And what is that? What is the educational crisis that this article points to? Say that again.
So there's like not enough like teachers in the education system. They're having trouble like recruiting, preparing like teachers and then retaining them.
So that's a part of it, right? And this what I'm going at has to do with inequality. So like, we have a lot of resources that are devoted to education in the United States. Are there uniform gains for everyone, or are there certain folks that are lagging behind?
Places that are underprivileged, have more minority students, there's teachers, teachers.
Exactly, and so if we look in terms of student performance, so here's the update. Lots of progress in the past 20 years. But low income and minority students lag their peers in terms of performance. What are some examples of this phenomenon that are given in the paper? overall we've seen progress, but there's this distributional issue that you see that low income and minority students are lagging in performance relative to their peers.
I just have a question.
Sure.
101 minority,
No, this is low.
and what was the next one? The low income.
And minority students lag their peers in terms of performance. What are some of the measures of performance that we use?
The paper mentions fully qualified teachers, so like they're allocated to students with lower incomes.
Right, so. So you have, so again, they receive lower quality teachers. That's one metric. So another metric that's given in the paper too is that, for example, 53% of African American students. Right, only perform below proficiency level. Below the basic level, rather. Only 11% achieve proficiency. So this is like a huge issue, right? And a big part of this has to do with who is coming into teaching. So what's the quality of folks that are coming into teaching? So we can think about this as the extensive margin, right? And then we can think about the intensive margin as being like conditional on being a teacher. Where are these resources being allocated, right? Do we have teachers being allocated to the places where they can have the biggest impact, right? And so this is just to set the landscape. But whenever you read a paper, I always want you to keep in mind, why is this paper important? What is it about the world that this paper is identifying to set the stage? Okay. And then as you read through the rest of the paper, it sets up a very nice supply and demand framework for like teachers and also teacher quality, et cetera, too. And it's reasonably accessible. So like so for most of these classes, you will get an article like this that is from that book that I showed you. That kind of gives you an overview of the topics and gives you the sense of what you're walking into ahead of the lecture. I want to use this to now pivot towards asking the question, who goes into teaching? And how is the selection changing over time? So in economics, like we talk a lot about selection. So when we started this course, we observed that the returns to going to college was a lot higher on average, right? It was people that went to college were employed and people that didn't go to college. And then we made the point that this could be due to the fact that college is increasing their wages, or it could be due to the S word. What's the S word? Say it again? Signaling, right? Right. Signaling and selection, right? So the people that are more able, it's cheaper for them to go to school, and so by going to college, they're just signaling. So you could have selection completely driving this, right? And so we want to understand this issue of selection. So let's go down to who's going into teaching. And how is this changing over time? All right. And so what we're going to do here is we're going to write down a very simple example of a two-sector work model. And so in this model, there are going to be two industries. We're going to have teaching, and then there's going to be some alternative occupation. And we're going to have the returns to those occupations being driven by how much skill a person has. And skills are going to be compensated differently in these two occupations. And also, like, what's the basic level of wages that somebody would earn in the absence of any skill. And this is just a very simple conceptual model, just to make the basic point that as we change the wages that is that are being paid into a sector, that's going to influence like the likelihood of somebody sorting into that sector, right? As we change the returns to skill in that sector, that's also going to be changing who are the people in terms of their skills or their ability that are going to be sorting into that sector as well. Does that make sense? Okay. So let's set this up. Any questions so far? Any questions? No. Okay, this is just your thought process. It's like the thinker knows. It's like the sea thinker. Okay. All right. So. So we're going to look at this wide model of occupational selection. And this is really like a baby wide model. It's like a baby wide. We can do the full wide. A lot of fun. Okay. So here's the setup. So we have two sectors in the labor market. Teaching, which we denote by the subscript T, and the outside option. Or the alternative career. Which we denote to be O. And just to make a quick point, so like when we think about the labor market opportunities for women historically in the United States, teaching was one of the first professions that women were practicing. And what we saw over time is that as women started to participate in the labor market and there was less discrimination in the labor market, women started to enter along those sectors too. And so you can really think about this as like a very basic stripped down model for like getting at this process. And just in general, when you model something too, it's always easy to think about a model where there's two sectors or there's two types, liability and mobility. In general, there are going to be multiple sectors, but like if you can show the results for a very simple case where there are just two sectors, this helps you to really pin down what's the intuition that's really driving the results, and you can do it in a very simplified way. Because at its base level, a model is really supposed to be a representation of reality that gives you some insights. The model doesn't have to actually be reality in the fullest sense of the word. Okay? And so you gain some notion of congruence here by looking at these two sectors, right? Okay. And wages will be based on wages in each sector will be based on skill. And then we're going to assume that individuals choose the occupation highest wages given their skill. Can everybody still see down here? Okay, no. This is dicey. Okay, I'll continue up here. So we can have in the teaching profession, we can have WT is equals to AT plus beta subscript T times S, right? Where S is going to be the level of skill. In the past, we've seen S to be like the level of schooling. So you can think about this as, you can think about this S as being some index that includes like schooling, ability, and a lot of other things too. This is a very stripped down model, right? And beta T is what? What's beta T? What's the interpretation of this coefficient? Beta T. is it again?
It's like the skill languages.
Yeah. So this is the return to skill. This is the return to skill. Right? And what is AT going to be?
Skill.
Exactly. That's exactly right. AT is like the wages of the teacher with skill. Right? Any questions on this so far? All right. So let's now look at the outside option. We're going to have wages, which are going to be WO is equal to A subscript O plus beta O. That's where we have the same interpretation. So what's beta O going to be? What's beta O going to be?
Return to skill and action.
Yep, exactly right. So beta O is going to be returns to skill outside option. And what's A0 going to be? What's A0?
Wages with zero skill.
Where? This is the wages of the worker as equal to 0, outside option. What we're gonna do next is we're gonna just graph these. We're gonna take like certain values of these parameters, so like AT beta T, AO beta O, and we're going to look at what point is a worker indifferent between these two sectors, and for what levels of skill is a worker going to prefer working in the teaching occupation versus working in the outside option. And then what happens is we change the relative slopes of these two curves and also the relative intercepts too, right? But before we do that, let's just think conceptually. Let's say, for example, we had two occupations. We had a secondary school teacher and we had a computer programmer at Google. Do we think in that context, what do we think is going to be, do we think that AO is going to be larger than AT in that context? Okay, why?
Because a computer programmer should make room for teacher.
Okay, computer programming. Well, what is A not? What is A not?
Zero skills.
Right, it's the wages of somebody with zero skill. So I show up to Google, I don't know what a computer is to begin with, right? Whereas I show up to a classroom and I don't know what teaching is.
They should be the same.
Well, I mean,
Unknown.
okay. Who has other thoughts on that?
I think it makes sense how like a teacher with no skill would make more starting off from a computer program, but no skill, but I feel like,
Okay, so you make that statement, so defend that point. Defend that point of view.
well, I think I could see that be true because
Uh-huh.
computer programming isn't one of those things that you want to try and do with no skill. Whereas, I'm not trying to knock teaching at all. but it'd
Oh,
be
no, I'm
easier
not
to
offended
figure
at
out
all.
computer programming
Yeah.
with no skill or experience. So I guess that's probably what I would say.
Yeah, I mean, so, okay, another thought.
And also, like, with computer learning, there's like, I feel like there's more room to move up, like, you know, there's entry-level positions, and as you get more experience, you move
Yeah.
up with teaching. Like, you can, you know, hire your own education and get more pay that way, or become, you know, tenure, or like a master teacher or whatever, but there really are only so many different positions to move up to, so.
Oh, that's interesting. So you would say that, so you're thinking that 8 is larger or smaller than 18? No, just take a stand.
I have no idea.
Okay, just,
Could A not be larger because they're like the computer programming company
sees like the potential like for there's gonna be like greater output like when in the end, so that they want to attract people even if they have no skill, because in the end, like after they've poured all this training into them, they're gonna be worth more. Whereas like a teacher, they're gonna pour into all the skills, and then like they're just gonna keep making the same amount.
So what you've done, so this is interesting. So the reason why I throw this out there is there isn't really a right answer or wrong answer, right? Because I mean like, there are a number of ways that you can take it. So the way that you've taken it is to say, look, what if the computer programming firm says, look, we just need a warm body. Computer programming is sufficiently easy. We're going to teach you what to do. And like, as long as you have like some level of, as long as you're willing to come and work, we can teach you how to computer program. And so we'll actually like pay you a lot to get you in the door, right? Now, what that does is that introduces like a new element to this model, which is that there's going to be some human capital accumulation on the job, right? And so that's totally fine. Under those assumptions, you can say, well, look, somebody that shows up to work at Google, we're going to train you, you're going to be awesome, right? The alternative could be what was said over here, which is really, look, like if you show up to a classroom, like just maintaining law and order, just telling the kids to sit down, like you've won half the battle. If you just tell them sit down and like color, right? Or sit down and like do this assignment, and I can pass this on and say, okay, here's an assignment. I don't need to know how to do it. But once I have the ability to just like be a physical body in the room, there's like an enormous return to that. Whereas for computer programming, like if you come and you just sit in the office and cross your legs and eat the free food at Google, they're like, this person is a waste of space, right? And so you could argue that AT could be like a lot higher for the teacher versus for the programmer. What I want you to get from this exercise is, so we haven't done any modeling yet, but you can already see how, depending on where these levels are going to be, this is going to affect where people absorb. So if, for example, like, let's say like for substitute teachers, they just come in and they just hand out papers, like super low ability people are like, I'm totally going to be a substitute teacher because it's like, the returns to me like being a low skilled person is like ginormous, as opposed to if I go and be a programmer, they're going to find out that I'm an idiot, they're going to fire me like right away, right? And so you can already think about like how the levels of these parameters are going to separate the labor market into two places, right? So wherever the returns to skill is going to be higher, the high ability people are going to sort into that application. Let's put some flash on that by popping some stuff up on the board here. Okay, great. So we're going to look at this wage locus again, where we have wages as a function of skill. So this is going to be a graph of wages as a function of skill. And so we have skill on this axis here, and we have wages on this axis. And for the purposes of illustration, what we're going to do is we're going to say, let this be teaching. And then let this be the outside option. So we've necessarily assumed that A0 is less than AT, right? And so let's call this point here S1 star. So at the point S1 star, what can we say about workers with respect to these two sectors?
Their wages are even.
What's equal? Their skill level is equal, but their skill level at any point along here is going to be. There's something else that we can say.
Their wages are the same at that point.
Exactly, the wages are the same at this point, because if we went to a point that is here instead, right? Let's say for like S lower bar. So this S lower bar less than S1, right? Who earns the higher wages, teachers or computer programmers? Teachers, right? Let's say we go to a point here S upper bar. Who earns the higher wage? Computer programmers. Okay, good. And so now say, given the wage functions, returns to skill in teaching and the outside option. Workers sort in the following way. Whatever way you say sorting, we're just saying like which choices they get made. So if S is less than S1 star, which occupation are they going to choose? Okay. If S is greater than S1 star, which one are they going to choose? Which one are they going to choose? Okay, computer programming. So let's see the outside option. I just use computer programming as an example. So if I give something like this on the test, like don't say computer programming, obviously, because it could be something that's like super low skill. And then you're like, well, the person that's that's handing out papers, they're gonna like make way more money than the teacher, even if they're high skill. Like this is just, it's just an example. What if S is equal to S1 star? Say it again? They're gonna be different. They're gonna be now, one thing that we're going to need that's really important, and this is kind of like a subtle point, if these two lines were parallel, right? What that would mean is that, what would make these two lines parallel? What condition, which two parameters would have to be the same to make these two lines parallel? The betas have to be the same, right? Because the betas are the slope. The differences have to be parallel. They would never meet. And if they never met, then the issue would be that we would not be able to have this kind of separating equilibrium, right? Because they need to have some kind of an intersection point where some people are going to be indifferent between the two occupations, and folks just to the left are going to choose one occupation, and folks with higher skill are going to choose the other occupation too. So that's like an important technical point. So in order for this model to represent reality, we're going to need for the returns to skill in these two occupations to be different. Because if the returns to skill in these two occupations were exactly the same, but the intercepts were different, then all of the workers would be in just one occupation. Does everyone get that point? Any questions at that point?
So does this mean for there to be an intercept between teaching and outside, that whichever like an AT or AO who's bigger, the opposite one would have to be a bigger beta? Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense, right? Because if something has like a higher intercept and a higher slope, then there's no way that it's going to meet the other thing too. Because for people that have like super low skill, they're going to be earning more. But then even over time, like the gap is going to be increasing by a whole lot more, right? Okay. This is just something to be aware of. Okay. Now, what we're going to do next, and let me keep an eye on ATM pool. Okay, let's pause there for a second. Let's take a 5-minute break, and then like just a little bathroom break. And then when we come back, what we're going to do is we're going to look at the Oxley paper, which gets at this question of what has been driving, what has contributed to like the labor market choices of women, like why are women in the labor market for education. So let's take a 5-minute break and we'll come back.